First of all, really appreciate you having me here. I love this environment. Everyone here is working in an area that fascinates me, but I have to tell you, I am a tried and true B2B person. So listening to Koo and Spencer and all of these emotional things that go on in the B2C space, not me. What I love is this concept that businesses need efficiency. Businesses need to find what they're looking for. And, there really isn't a lot of emotion. Now, there is a lot of complexity. I don't know if you know this, but commercial vehicles, work trucks and vans and some SUVs, et cetera, power 80% of our GDP. And we saw a lot of that during COVID, right? When the essential businesses, it became very clear that they're the backbone of our economy. And there was this explosive growth in delivery. But there was a big problem. The VIN, which you guys all know what that is assigned to the vehicle before it's sent to the dealership. But that vehicle in that commercial space isn't done. And you'll look at the little graphic there on the bottom. There's stuff that has to happen before it becomes what the customer, the business, needs. And no one was tracking that information. So you couldn't find them. You couldn't optimize ordering. You couldn't understand which ones you should have on your lot. The companies that were actually doing the upfits had no data around what was popular. And OEMs didn't even know whether or not this particular F450 had problems because it was being, and it was going to be a dump truck as opposed to a flatbed. So, and of course, valuation is absolutely not available for the complexity of these vehicles. And so that's really what drove me to try and solve the problem. And so in 2012, we launched our first dealership plugin. Goes into their website, and I'll show you in a minute an example. But what that did is it actually captured that upfitted configuration information and made it searchable. Once again, back to the efficiency, the practicality of customers that were business customers. And guess what? We even put a little button on the dealer's website that said commercial. Believe it or not, up until then, a commercial business would come to a dealer website and they wouldn't even know if that dealer did anything for them. They'd have to start looking at little pictures in their inventory. So B2B really typically starts as a SaaS model, right? And what's exciting about it is it's kind of like a business multiplier. I see it as being very exciting. So we started with a little plug-in, and then what starts happening is, I'm sorry, this is my sketching, but what happens is it becomes like a business multiplier. You can start seeing that, businesses actually, one lead, one customer does more at a higher price, at a larger margin, and more consistently. So kind of the way I think about this opportunity that started in 2012 and has been kind of a long building process is building a platform that allows us to be involved with the entire commercial vehicle life cycle, the ecosystem, right? On the supply chain side, right, there's the dealer, the OEM, the buyer, and the upfitter. That's the word for the day, right? Just so you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. The upfitter is that dump truck person. If you look, though, at the entire life cycle of this vehicle, that entire ecosystem is $1.8 trillion. And the unique thing about it, and you heard earlier speakers about, 1,500 finance companies that they're working with and 280 this and all of that. Because it's such a unique space, there aren't that many people specializing in it. There's been no data, so how could you become a specialist? How could you take advantage? There are probably realistically 5 banks that finance commercial. That's different, right? It's a business that you're financing. They're typically buying more than one vehicle. And if you think about all of the Candyland and the complexity, that's not complex here. In fact, before COVID, over 60% of all commercial vehicles were being bought sight unseen already, because there's a checklist of the function that you need, and most of them are white. So to me, it's very exciting, the opportunity. And what we ended up doing is we took the platform that we were building, and I'm going to walk through these as quickly as possible because it's a lot of stuff. And then from that platform, as we started connecting the different suppliers and building a supply side, we launched a marketplace, Convoy, and now we've kind of added this new part of it, which I'll talk to you about in a minute. So dealership platform, right? Manage, display, and track commercial vehicles that have never been able to be looked at and searched by, I need a 12-foot bed. I need a double aluminum level dump truck, right? Commercial vehicle inventory searchable by full specifications. That's the complicated part of it, because there's a lot of differences. And then after we launched that, and we have a lot of dealer solutions, we were asked by different partners to do more. So this is the tier 1 sites that General Motors has. This is one of them, Chevrolet.com. And we power their commercial searches. Because guess what? We know more about these vehicles and what they really are. And that's what people are looking for. That's what the businesses are definitely trying to find. And because we started powering these and we started helping the upfitters through providing them with ways to show customers who are loyal to their brand's been hidden. You probably don't know the name Knapheide, but Knapheide is a business that's been in business for 175 years, still family owned, used to build the wagons, right? And now they are the largest body upfit manufacturer in the United States. And we power a locator on their site that lets customers come there and shop what vehicles are on dealers' websites in one place because they're brand loyal to Knapheide. So it wasn't unusual that we would think about doing a marketplace. So Convoy was kind of this labor of love. It took a year for us to figure out what we really wanted to do. And I will tell you that there are some what I would call third-party lead generators or classified channels, right, out there that have been around forever. They just, they were print and then they made listings. And their model's really around selling listings and then selling, placement. Let's shove you in front of everybody's faces. And we said, we're not going to do that. We're going to make this a marketplace that is a true marketplace. It's helping the buyer get to exactly what they're looking for as quickly as possible and with as little friction as possible. And so it took us a year. We built and launched Convoy at the end of 2019. It wasn't bad timing, accidentally, and because people needed to look for these vehicles online. So Convoy grew quickly. And I think the other part of it is that, it became more transparent in the industry, that you could go someplace and see stuff because the third-party lead generators kind of hid everything behind what they wanted you to look at. And so we started expanding. We do different kinds of promotions, but we don't do a lot of advertising at all on it because we're really more about trying to talk to the targeted customers. And by the way, that's the other thing I really like about B2B is it's a very clear target who you want to talk to. And now we're launching special sections. We've got a whole section that's on new propulsion, which would include not just EV, but also hydrogen and other drivetrain changes that are going on in the industry that, by the way, will be adopted more regularly, I guess I would call it, than in the consumer space. Because as long as the proposed new propulsion has value to the business in one way or another, whether it's green credits or whether it's efficiency in fuel economy, they're going to adopt it. That's what's really exciting about that space. And so we kind of ended up pulling together this concept of being the thought leaders in this space and wanting to educate people. So we now have launched what we call Commercial Vehicle Business Network. We have a site that we publish a couple of publications. We do episodes and stories. We do videos. And we do news. And we also have our own virtual event now in the spring and the fall that's all about bringing together the cross-section of this really complex but very important space to talk about business. Because up until now, the only kinds of events were really about the product itself, the vehicles themselves. And now we talk about what direction things are going. And in fact, we've started putting together a playbook that covers different types of the segments. So we've got 4 chapters on how to, this is primarily focused for dealers, but when you look at it, you can see it really looks at how do we pull all of the different stakeholders to really deliver what's important to these unique buyers, because this is what's powering our economy. So, and I am looking here. I guess I'm fast too. I guess I've got 5 left. I think so.
I was going to ask you exactly the first question. So, what's the commercial model in the business, and does it differ at all from other marketplaces?
I think what's really interesting about B2B is that in my mind, it's a longer play.
Yeah.
B2B is relationship. It's about value. And so when we decided to build and launch Convoy, I told my investors, don't expect to make any money off of this for at least a year. We're not going to charge dealers. We had great supply. We were launching a marketplace with over 150,000 vehicles on it.
Wow.
Right? And so as we looked at whether or not we wanted, and I really love Spencer's comment about, do you bundle stuff and, increase the package value, or do you try and sell it separately? We went through that whole process and said, yeah, whose advantage is if we give them an opportunity not to have it? So it's now bundled into we have 3 levels of packages.
Yeah.
Any dealer that's on our platform, their inventory is on Convoy. So then that's allowed us to, over the last year or so, to start looking at how do we monetize the traffic? And we have a little bit of advertising, but we really describe it more as partnerships. And that's why we're looking at, partners who focus in a particular area. Like, for example, one of the chapters that we wrote in that book is on finance. So we recently did an API with a company that is a fintech company that has a waterfall that allows us to control who the finance companies are by dealer.
Yeah.
And then on Convoy, right? Because it's all about mapping and matching.
Yeah.
So that we have SaaS, we have advertising, and now we have a revenue share.
Financing.
Yeah. We also just recently launched transportation, because if you think about all these separate things, right? Transportation of a work vehicle is so different than a car. Yeah.
So do you think, when you look at future business models, do you think the commercial sector is going to be one of the last to move towards transaction because of the nature of what you're buying? And I guess, do you really have to go and inspect these things to be, these vehicles
I
to be
think
very confident about them?
I really, my feeling is that it's easier. Because if I'm talking to a company that is doing transport of small packages, they're going to have a checklist of what they need, right? And so the part that's challenging is how uniquely different the type of purchases are than on the retail auto space. So they're building digital retailing, quote, whatever you want to call it. It's many names now, right? Our part has to be more closed in with more intelligent partners that understand how you can sell one. One person would reach out, they would do the research, then a company would buy it, and they'd buy 3.
Yeah.
That's not how it works on the retail side. But I'm very hopeful. That's why we're adding these APIs, is we're kind of playing around with, and I liked that who said, no, get rid of the funnel. It's really the cycle.
And so coming back to the questions here, you've had so much success in the category. How did you solve the data configuration, which is the anchor for your evolution in the marketplace? And I guess there's a question on top of that. Why did nobody else do it earlier?
Sometimes I get chills when I think about what I learned in about 2009, which is that here was a $300 billion space and nobody knew what they were selling.
Yeah.
I was teaching part-time marketing, and I'm like, how can that even be? And it took me a couple of years of researching and traveling to find out that nobody was really able to solve or trying to solve it because the supply chain was so fragmented. I actually ended up writing a 4-part article. It was going to be 1 part, but it was so complicated about the supply chain and how the way that the vehicle could be upfitted would go to maybe 3 different places and then end up back, right? But what ended up happening is that I figured the only place where the data was consistently was at the dealership just before it was sold, which is why I built the plugin that gave us access to that data.
So you took the data from the dealership, and from that, did you develop the taxonomy?
Yes. It's 10 years of development.
Wow.
We keep learning, and we keep doing projects that take that configuration down another layer where we can look at things like tires and, shocks and things like that. But I will share with you, if you all promise not to squeal on me, my mantra when we started the company was, if the dealer has to do anything, it won't happen. Now,
I think most of our...
Yeah, but here was what was funny about 2014. I realized that we were joking an awful lot about dealers, right? And kind of wasn't really, there were customers. So we had a contest in the company. You know how there's a murder of crows and a herd of elephants. So we had a contest to see what a group of dealers is.
And the answer is?
A blessing.
Wonderfully ironic. Does the same tracking issue exist in European countries? And actually, have you thought about taking your model elsewhere around the globe?
I think that one thing that I've seen, because I've been in the industry since 2007, is that what really has started making that possible is that the vehicles themselves, when I started in the industry, were very physically different in Europe and other countries than in the US. And now they've kind of, the designs and the approaches have gotten more and more similar. Now, how the process works, we've not stepped over to see if what we've developed will help, but it's configuration. And so I'm thinking it will.
Yeah. It always looks to us Europeans that America has a far greater variety of different types of truck.
Yes.
Last question, as we are now out of time, but you appear to have a smaller number of high-value customers. How do you plan to grow the revenue per customer? And is that true? Are the dealers typically, very specialist and very deep in what they do? Or?
So up until now, it's been a subset.
Yeah.
The OEMs actually have dealers that raise their hand and say, I want to be part of a commercial program. And of course, some brands, like the 3 US brands, those are the major ones that participate. But so first of all, from a serious TAM perspective, we believe that group, we have, we closed the deal with an OEM where we basically are serving all of their dealers that are in that program. So that's great, but I have a bigger vision. I think that any dealership should be empowered to be able to sell whatever to their local businesses, whether that's cars, whether it's trucks, whether it's telematics, because see, this is the whole
Yep.
thing. You look at what Ford's done with Ford Pro, and you look at what GM just announced with GM Envolve. Telematics, gas cards, charging stations, fleet management. They're going to drive that through the dealership so that
Yep.
the dealership can have a deeper B2B relationship with their customers that are businesses.
And for you, that's your potential expansion in
I
revenue
think
as well.
ultimately, if we can make it easy for any dealer to have a business with their local businesses, that would be my big blue sky goal.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for coming and sharing with us.
problem.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thank
Let me
you.
just take...